What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Kick Ass Podcast. Um, Today we will be going over all things AEW in this show, and excuse me, I will be talking primarily about our good fearless leader. Uh, Fearless obviously isn't the right word. Tony Khan and the events that happened from Dynamite. I'm laughing because I just rewatched the clip from him appearing on the NFL Network, and he, bless his heart, man. This dude, and props to him. It appeared on NFL Network to obviously discuss the draft picks with the draft happening in the NFL, him being a part of the Jacksonville Jaguars. No shocker there. But to his credit, he is sitting there in his neck brace, and I don't know these two gentlemen, so apologies, but maybe their names are in the article here. But they're talking about what happened, and it was actually really good. It was actually a really good beginning portion of the little, I don't even know if you call it interview, but just the segment with Tony. They were discussing what happened on AEW Dynamite and the closing segment, which we're obviously going to talk about here. And therefore, the fact that he's in a neck brace, obviously, that's most likely going to raise some questions for people. So I don't know. I didn't see the beginning portion. I just saw about a 3-minute clip here. um, but he's sitting there in his neck brace, which props to him. That was one of my things. Like, if you're gonna do the shit that you did on Wednesday, like, and you have the draft literally like the next day, follow up on that. And props to him, he did. You know what I mean? He's sitting there in his neck brace, but he's still moving his head a bit. If you guys are watching on YouTube, that's some pauses there that explains the brief moments of non-audio, but they're talking about what happened on Wednesday night and the fact that at first he took a Meltzer driver, but it was rebranded the Tony Khan driver a few months ago. And one of the gentlemen, they're like, well, if it's called the Tony Khan driver, you like, like you knew this months ago. And Tony Khan was like, yeah, in retrospect, I should have probably seen it coming. Da 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 da. Then he goes on to pretty much describe the segment. He states that he sent Jack Perry out to New Japan and on an excursion, I think is how he labeled it, to go to New Japan after, well, he didn't say after the things that happened, but obviously after what happened at All In. Jack Perry wanted to be brought back. They decided to have a discussion in the ring, and pretty much Jack, you're just describing it. Jack asked to be reinstated. Tony Khan obliged, pretty much acted like nothing happened, and then we're obviously going to be getting into it. And then the guys there are just like pretty much just appeasing him, and letting him discuss what's happening and why he's sitting there in the neck brace. And then he goes on. They asked him something, and then he goes on to say, yeah, there's a lot of great things happening in Jacksonville this weekend, or this week. And he then decides to make comparisons between AEW and WWE. He boasted that, and again, shout out to ProWrestling.net for the transcription, but Tony Khan boasted that AEW is the most successful sports startup since the AFL, and then fired a shot at WWE. Quote, there has not been a challenger brand that has gained as much market share as AEW in many, many, many years. We are like the Pepsi of pro wrestling, and we are up against a really evil juggernaut. WWE is our competitor. That's who we're facing. AEW is the Pepsi of pro wrestling. Excuse me. AEW is the Pepsi of pro wrestling. WWE is like the Harvey Weinstein of pro wrestling. And immediately after he says that, the guys are like, oh, okay. And then they're pretty much just like, okay, well, can you at least, I think they ask him another question, and I don't want to hit play in case there's any copyright or anything like that, but excuse me. They're kind of just like, okay, like not uncomfortable, but just like, okay, like I don't want to, let's, not get into that type of shit. But it's like, why, bro? Why? First of all, it started off great, right? Like, you're doing great. It was better acting here than he did in the ring. Um, and again, he's not a wrestler, right? So there's only so much critique I think that would be warranted. But my goodness, my fucking goodness, um, the fact that it started off great, right? The interview that he was doing with on NFL Network, and he was talking about the angle and taking it seriously. And he mentioned that Shad Khan, they mentioned his father was there, and Shad was really concerned, and one of the guys in the ring was like, "What are you doing? That's a billionaire." And Tony was just like, "Yeah, and going along with it, and everything was good. And then unprompted, he brings up WWE, and he brings up the fact that WWE is like the Harvey Weinstein of pro wrestling. Why? First of all, that's a very disgusting comparison. Obviously, we all know what's going on with Vince, so I can maybe see where the comparison would come in at and where he was referring to. And obviously that's what he's referring to, right? But Vince isn't running the company. He hasn't been running the company for a little bit of time now. Why compare yourself to something like that? Like, it doesn't make you look better just because. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, you shouldn't be praised for just doing the right thing in a lot of ways and just being a decent human being. So in the sense where what Vince allegedly did is despicable and disgusting and all the words that you can think of, why would you feel better comparing yourself to someone like that? Like, it should be a given that you're not going to do shit like that. You're not going to allow stuff like that to happen. You're not going to create that type of environment. So why would you feel even okay with making that comparison? I would want nothing to do with that type of comparison. You know what? I would not want my company associated with that type of comparison. So it was just very strange to me. I don't know if he was just saying something to be buzzworthy, or I don't know. To me, it was just kind of disgusting, and just really like turned me off to the whole segment. Obviously I was laughing at the beginning. um, but it's just one of those things where it's like, dude, like, you should have just stopped while you were ahead. Like, it was good, and then you just had to go there. You just had to say something that was unnecessary. So that's pretty disgusting to me. I don't, again, know why it was necessary or why he felt it was necessary. But with that being said, before we even get to Dynamite, though, like, we Pat McAfee, his show was recording there, and they even referenced Tony Khan being in a neck brace. And I forget, I think maybe it was Connor. Boston Connor was on there. He was like, if you're gonna be in a neck brace, don't move your head. Stay stationary. But I mean, they're just gonna shit on him just because, you know what I mean. But it's like, I get it, but I just give him props that he stayed true to it. He went through with it. Uh, that's good. If you're gonna do, like I said, the shit that you did on Wednesday, you can't not show up like that, and you can't just act like everything's cool after that, right? Literally not even 24 hours later, or maybe it was, I don't know when the interview was recorded, but maybe at that point it was 24 hours. But it's like, you if you're gonna do it, I keep laughing because there's just like a little, I mean, it may even be the cover for the show, but it's just a picture of him, the two guys that were interviewing him on the NFL Network, and then him just sitting there like in his neck brace. It's just fucking hilarious. And that's why the comments too just really just bug the fuck out of me. It's like, it was so unnecessary. And to me, it kind of, I don't know, it kind of not downplays the accusations and what he was tried and convicted for, even though it apparently has been overturned. But it's like, dude, like, that's just like a level where you shouldn't even reference and you shouldn't even touch on. But with that being said, we will go to the AEW Dynamite side of it, and kind of backtrack. But I just wanted to reference that in case I ran out of time or forgot. The show I will reference here as well. We're kind of going in reverse order. And shout out again for Jason Powell at ProWrestling.net. But the show itself generated 683,000 viewers for Wednesday night's Dynamite. Again, which is weird to me too, that they didn't promote Tony Khan being in the ring, right? It didn't and maybe it was something they decided of that day, but it's like if you're gonna be in the ring and you know a couple days in advance or even a day in advance that Tony Khan and Jack Perry, whether you know it's gonna be in the main event or not, but that they're gonna come face to face and speak in the ring, why wouldn't you advertise that? Why wouldn't you promote that? So it's just very strange to me. Like of all the major announcements that we've had in the past, like why wasn't something like this promoted unless it was a last minute thing? And if it was, then that's just I I can't buy into that though with how heavy of an angle it was and how clear it is that they have an idea of where they're going to go with this. So I will give them that. You know, I was always told you had to have a sandwich, right? Positivity, throw in the negative, then and then and on the positive as well. But so that's what I'm trying to do. But it's like I don't know. And when you look at the viewership from 2 years ago, that's damn near 200,000 less. So the April, I know from last year, the April 26, 2023 edition garnered 863,000 viewers, and then last night's or Wednesday's rather did 683,000. So they did have the competition from the NBA, obviously, and the NHL playoffs, but that's still, I don't know. I feel like if you would have at least promoted that, it probably would have gained, probably would have at least cracked at least 700,000 as your average for the overall show, maybe even 750. But man, like it's just, and we're not going to get into ratings debate, but like it's just, I don't know, very, I don't want to say concerning, but it's not great. Um, but the issues that I had with Dynamite specifically, the main one to me, even more so than the main event, was the treatment of Swerve and the lack thereof, and the fact that even before the show started, the poster for the lineup of the card promoting the Dynamite show, at the very top you had John Moxley, which is the IWGP World Champion, versus Will Hobbs. Yes, that should be towards the top of the card, but it should not be above your homegrown, well, not homegrown, but your home champion, your world heavyweight champion, the guy who just won this supposed to be historic moment, right, for your company, this monumental moment, this feel good moment, and then you just overshadow him. You just put him a slot below someone else's champion. To me, that was just a slap in the face, and it just really kind of made me a little mad, probably a little bit more irritated than it should have. But then I was like, okay, well maybe it is what it is. John Moxley is obviously quote the bigger star, but that's part of the problem too. That's part of what you should be doing is elevating Swerve, and obviously with him winning, that's the launching pad. So I was like, okay, well, maybe it'll at least get better on the show, right? It's just a picture that majority of people won't even see. So we get to the show. Excalibur opens the show, and again, shout out ProWrestling.net. Excalibur opens the show with footage that aired earlier from, I think it was an SUV. Someone I think it was Wade who had mentioned it was a Ford SUV. Like why wouldn't you show up in a fancier car? But whatever. uh, fair point though. There's an SUV containing Okada, Matthew, and Nicholas Jackson, and then or just the three of them. A second SUV arrived holding Jack Perry, who then looked into the camera and smiled. AEW security approached Perry, but the Jacksons told security guards that Perry was with them, who backed off, and then they walked towards the building. Nicholas said they had some business to attend to. So, okay, nothing big there, but no Swerve. Then Orange Cassidy, his entrance music played while Excalibur mentioned that he was joined on commentary by Taz and Schiavone. Cassidy was shown then thrown rather, onto the stage, and then Beretta walked out behind him. Beretta worked over Cassidy on the stage. Once in the ring, Beretta called for Chuck Taylor to join him. Taylor entered the ring while Excalibur noted that Taylor entered from the crowd rather than the backstage area. They continue to go on. I'm not really going to get into it because it is what it is. It is weird that Chuck Taylor said, Trent, I've always thought you're a piece of shit, because it's like, okay, but you've been best friends with him for years. What are we doing? But okay, so that's segment one. No mention of your newly crowned champion. Nothing. Next up, we get a So you would think, okay, well that's just get that out of the way. Next up, we have your IWGP Heavyweight Champion, who is at the top of the poster, Jon Moxley, backstage delivering a promo. Excellent promo. Great job. Great job. Then goes through that. Then we finally get Prince Nana walking onto the stage while Swerve's entrance finally played. Nana told the fans to get on their feet and show respect for the AEW World Champion. Strickland made his entrance with the title belt around his waist. Swerve looked into the camera and pulled his jacket back to show off the title while also smiling to show off his grill. Nice attention to detail there, Jason. And then footage was shown of Strickland beating Samoa Joe to win the title. Oh, here we go. Here we go. At AEW Dynasty, Kyle Fletcher. They made his entrance along with Don Callis. They go on to have a okay match. I think it was like 15 minutes or so. You couldn't hear anything for the first hour, but that's it. That's what we get for your world champion. No promo, no package, no nothing, no clips from the media scrum, no promo time, no nothing, no showcasing the monumental moment that it should have been and that it was hyped up to be. Nothing. The dude just has an opening match, not even the opening, a few, a segment or two back. I'm just blown away. Your MJFs of the world, your Kenny Omegas of the world, your Jon Moxleys of the world, your Chris Jerichos, your Hangman Page. None of them won the title on a pay-per-view on Sunday, and then the next week didn't have the opening segment, didn't have the promo time, didn't have a recap of them winning the moment or winning the title and having that moment at the pay-per-view. But rather, we have the Young Bucks arriving backstage from a clip that aired earlier in the day. Then we have Orange Cassidy and Trent in your opening segment, which, if you look at the ratings, that's always their highest moment of the show. 9 times out of 10. It's because of the lead-in from Big Bang Theory or whatever the show is prior. So you choose to not, at the very least, show a recap package. With the package, you can have the audio of Swerve cutting a promo. If you, for whatever reason, don't want to do it live, have it spliced over the footage that's being aired and with him talking about how much it meant to him, whatever. But it's like you just completely overlook the guy. It really, really did not sit well with me, and it's not a good indicator for the future going forward. And now it's just a given to me that Ospreay is going to beat him at some point, or whoever. How many is still on Ospreay? But that's the other kind of, I don't want to say, well, I guess it is a negative or a detractor, I'll say, that I have from the show. Is a fucking Will Ospreay is he won, what was it, a casino gauntlet match for a shot at the AEW International Championship. All we have been seeing and hearing from Will is he came to AEW to prove he's the best, to show what he's been doing in New Japan, what he's been saying and how he's been saying he's the best, and to show it in a different market and to prove that he's the best. That's why he fought against Bryan Danielson. The fact that we go through all of this, right? He's here to fight to prove that he's the best. To prove that you're the best, you should go and want to go up against the number one guy, which should be your World Heavyweight Champion, which is Swerve. He did not mention Swerve. Again, tonight. Maybe he did. There was something that I missed, but nothing that I saw. He's in this random new match. I didn't even know the rules for it, which it could be kind of cool, but it was not explained. And again, I could have missed it. I couldn't hear much. It's just not I just don't understand why you have someone the star quality of a Will Ospreay, why you throw him in a match like that unannounced, really, which aspect of surprise, that's cool, but why would he want to go for the international championship? And okay, let's say he wins this, he faces off against Roderick Strong. That's who he wants to face off against next to prove he's the best. Okay, nothing against Strong, he's obviously very good in the ring, but and out of all the titles, so you don't want to go up against Edge or Adam Copeland, you don't want to go up for that championship. Like, why the international championship? Maybe because of the meaning behind it. He could feel like he's representing his homeland. Okay, and that could that could possibly it. He wanted to go after that title to kind of fight for his country in a way, and to put Europe on the map, and to have them face off, and possibly do a title unification match or a champion versus champion match. But it's completely lessening the impact in the story and taking away from the hunt. And that's the whole point, is you're on the hunt and you're on a mission to become the world heavyweight champion and to prove that you're the best. So the fact that you are fighting and fighting and fighting, and it takes me back to what Swerve said at the media scrum. He said that when he was in the tournament, I think for the Continental Classic, he didn't really want to win. Not that he didn't want to win, but he was good with not pursuing that and not going back after that, because his focus was on becoming the first African American world heavyweight champion in AEW. So, and to put them on the map that way and to do what needs to be done, right? In that role. And the fact that he finally accomplished that, it really stood out to me in the opposite way with Will, because that's kind of the same story that Will was on, in the same journey that Will was on. And then now all of a sudden he's just fighting for the international championship. Why would you want a secondary title, or maybe even a tertiary title? Why? So you could be the belt collector? Like, your focus should be on being the man and being the number one guy. And to me, it just doesn't, it just really threw a wrench in it. And I, excuse me, I didn't like it. I just flat out didn't like it. He did not need to be involved. You could have had him come out if you wanted him to appear in front of the crowd. Have him cut a promo, since clearly Swerve can't cut a promo, and Swerve can't get mic time after winning the championship. But I just, I don't see it. I don't see it. And yes, he can elevate the title like something similar to Okada's doing, but that kind of plays into it too. Why the fuck are all these big time stars going after all these lesser titles? Is it the mindset for them to elevate them? Okay, but it kind of just, it takes away from one true target that you want to go after, and that you want to be the best. Being the international champion doesn't prove that you're the best. And I don't even know what it means right now. So it's just kind of ass backwards to me, and it's just kind of taking 5 steps back for Will in the sense of story. Yes, it's going to be a great match. He's probably going to win, and he could do a lot for it. But what's the end game? He carries that championship into facing off against possibly Swerve, if Swerve's still a champion at All In at this point. And is it going to be a unification? Then okay, I'm all here for getting rid of a title. You know what I mean? But it's like, I don't see that happening. And if so, then cool. But it's just unnecessary. And if you're already looking to unify and eliminate titles, then you should just have a different way of doing it. You shouldn't have one of your biggest stars and one of the stars that's gaining the most momentum. It just completely took over being like the top babyface. Like, you're just completely, I don't want to say dousing him, but you're cooling him off for no real reason. I'm not gonna get into the match, but just shout out to Will Hobbs. I hope his knee injury isn't as serious, but it doesn't look good from what I've heard. So shout out to him, and best wishes. But we're gonna get into the closing segment here. I'm just getting to it. Jack Perry was introduced and he walked out to no music wearing all black with a scapegoat armband. Perry said he had some of the best nights of his life in Jacksonville. He said he had business to handle and wanted to handle with Tony Khan. Khan joined Perry in the ring. Perry said he and Khan have had their ups and downs, but the only thing he's ever wanted is what's best for AEW. Perry asked Khan to shake his hand and reinstate him so they could continue to change the world together. Khan shook Perry's hand and then he hugged him. So, this guy, during your pre-show of the biggest night of the company's history, made a stupid comment referencing something that none of us even knew. Nothing TV related, nothing story related, nothing. Which then, not his fault, caused a confrontation, a scuffle backstage, which then led to your biggest star at that time, CM Punk, quitting and you having to let him, whether he quit or he was fired, whatever the final ruling was, doesn't matter. You went on TV and proclaimed that you, the following week, that you feared for your life. You then, per your words, shipped Jack Perry to Japan on an excursion for 7 months, almost 8 months. He appears in New Japan, tears up his AEW contract, says that he's a scapegoat. It's pretty much shitting on everything and blaming AEW and Tony Khan specifically for everyone hating him. You get in the ring. He simply just says they've had their ups and downs, but he's only wanted what's best for AEW. And just asked him to reinstate him. That's it. Tony Khan shakes his hand and they hug. That's it. All is well. All is well. What? That's completely asinine to me. It's completely backwards and it makes absolutely no sense. That was the first thing. I'm just like, what the fuck are we doing? And Tony Khan's just standing there just like, just enamored. Just like, yes, of course I'll have you back. Perry held up Khan's arm and then played to the crowd. All of a sudden, you could kind of see something was going on after he hugged Jack Perry looked to the camera and smiled. So you're like, all right, here we go. He's holding up his hand, and then all of a sudden, he takes the microphone and jabs it in Tony Khan's stomach. Tony Khan, it's the only thing that I can equate it to. It's one of those cartoons, right? It's one of those action cartoons, not action figure, like a superhero cartoons, right? Where you get hit, you go out, and you freeze, and then it falls back. You know what I mean? That scene where it's like you get the impact and then you fall back. That's Tony Khan. He gets hit, he just stands there, and then he falls back, which is the fucking craziest thing. It's like, and then he's just like laying just flat on the mat like that, just laying there, and then he starts holding his stomach, and it's like, okay, at the very least, you knew y'all were doing this shit today. That's what you came up. That's your reaction. Like that was the. I that will stick with me forever, and that memory will always stick with me. And again, like obviously he's not like a trained professional wrestler or anything like that. Like I get that, but it's like, my goodness, dude, like what the fuck. It's okay. Moving on. Matthew and Nicholas Jackson and Okada run out and act like they were there to calm Perry down, and then the Jacksons held Khan in position so they bring him back up. He stands him back up, right? And he so then Tony Khan's just standing there facing like the three of them, the Jacksons and Okada. They take their arms, Tony Khan's arms, and act like, everything's fine, they're here to save him. And Perry's just standing back there, just kind of awkwardly just standing there. And then clearly the Jacksons are setting Khan up for the now TK driver. Tony Khan, I mean, that was fine, because he didn't have to do anything. Just be held and then fall backwards. Didn't even have to act like he's holding his stomach. And that was it. And then we had some wrestlers come out from the back then. And then we got our first appearance from Shad Khan and the mustache that is on screen, which I liked that. I liked that aspect of it too. I like that if you're going to have a quote heavy angle like that you have the father come out there, right? And the fact that we've heard like briefly of him, but we all kind of, it's like you know who he is type shit, right? But I'm not a fan of the segment. It was way too, and I get the idea, right? And I can respect the fact that the ratings have been dipping a bit. There's kind of a lot of not great hype for AEW in the news right now, right? And a lot of people are still not backlashing, but a lot of people were not agreeing with the idea to air the footage. So I respect the fact that he's like, fuck it, you know what I mean? He being Tony Khan, he's like, fuck it. I'm gonna take the ball in my hands. I'm going to take the ball. I'm not going to pass it off. I'm going to take it. I'm going to do what I got to do. I'm going to get in the ring. I'm going to take some physicality. I'm going to put my body on the line, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do what I got to do for my show. Um, I can appreciate that and I can respect that, truly, in all seriousness. I can respect that, but it's one of those things that it looked better on paper than in presentation. um, but and I will say I will hold out hope for what ends up happening with this angle going forward. To me, I was hoping that Khan was just gonna it was gonna be one of those things where he's not even able to go to the shows because he's so distraught and he's in fear for his life. You know what I mean? And now he's even afraid to go back to work. Type shit. And then have the EVPs, the elite, just kind of take over the show in a way. Not for too long, maybe a week or two. And then that gives time to Khan to heal and possibly find some help to defend AEW against the Almighty and the Bad Guy Elites. We will be seeing Kenny Omega next week, so I'm assuming we will be getting a beatdown of Kenny as much as he can take. Not a full beatdown, right? But maybe something similar. Or maybe we see Kenny, like, he makes an appearance for the fans since they're going to be in Winnipeg, and then he gets beat down backstage, or we don't actually see the beat down. He's just taken out backstage, and it's who killed Kenny type of story, and setting up for his return. So maybe it could be like a Kenny Omega and Hangman Page facing off against the Elite when they return to save AEW. It is interesting to me though too that Omega had no idea that he was actually gonna be on the show next week. He heard, I think he had mentioned in his stream that he had heard that there was a possibility that he would, he was asked if he would be able to go to Winnipeg or something. And then his family started reaching out to him because the arena was advertising it. So then he was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm going to be at Dynamite next week in Winnipeg. Um, so learning a lot from the Kenny Omega stream on Twitch. So I think it's the Cleaner's Corner, or something like that on Twitch. I'm not sure exactly what his name is, but you can obviously find it. But yeah, guys, my main gripes with this week is the main one is honestly Swerve and just the lack of presentation there was, and I'm hoping that they'll fix that next week. But you only have the first impression once, right? You only have that opportunity once, and I'm not here for it. And the fact that Willow had promo time, which nothing against her, I'm happy she did, but that's just even more of a justification that Swerve should have as well. Yeah, I'm not here for the lack of substance that there was, and just just purely the lack that there was for Swerve. So I'm not happy with that. I think Osprey going after the international title is laughable. But I will hold out slight hope for that. For the main event, I think Tony Khan needs to stick with what he said 3 years ago, that he is not going to be an on-screen character, and just stick with that, because again, while I respect that he put his money where his mouth is, and put his body out there and put himself out there, you know what I mean, for all types of judgment and stuff. Not saying I could probably do much better. I don't know, but I would at least try to practice and make sure I looked somewhat passable doing it. But I think with that there is still more hope and more possibility with that angle. So we'll see. I think next week, hopefully they'll get a spike in their ratings. Maybe it'll pique some interest for people to see the follow up on Tony Khan, but I'm not holding up hope for that. But that's not my problem. That's not my job to worry about that. I am very curious to see what the whole Kenny Omega aspect of next week ends up being, and I would be surprised if it's not some type of injury angle from Okada to Omega. I think that would be fun to see. Kind of Okada taking Omega's spot in the Elite, finishing him off for good, and then we'll get, whenever Omega is able to return, we'll get that. And then depending on how long that is, and depending on how long the story goes, we can have Omega, like I said, in Hangman Page, and you would probably need one other person to fight off on behalf of Tony Khan to save AEW. But with that being said, just had to get this out here really quick. I gotta get dressed and head off to work now. But thank you as always, for checking out the show, checking out the pod. I truly appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at ASHMANNS and the show's Twitter page at Kickash Podcast _. But until next time, guys, enjoy some wrestling and stay safe.